So I was thinking about how much our attachment styles affect our relationships and our relating and our connections. And I was thinking about how important our connections are to us, how important our relationships are. And Bob used a word last week that I thought was really apropos, which is template. We do get these templates that, early in life, and they stay with us. And either we become aware of them and maybe begin to interact with them and address certain things, and or maybe we go through life and are not even aware of them. That it's just the way I am. But I don't think there's any question that our attachment styles have a profound impact on the way we relate. And I think a lot of us have been in experiences in relationships, and I'm not just talking about a significant other relationship, but any kind of close interpersonal relationship, friends, work, whatever, where we experience someone acting in a way, behaving in a way, talking in a way that is foreign to us. And we're like, and I, and in that moment, if I'm projecting onto them how I would respond, how I would take it, what I would do, um, then I'm not taking into account a different attachment style, different experiences that are present in this relationship. I've heard, people used to say when you take someone to bed, you've taken far more than that one person to bed. And in a lot of ways, you're taking their parents, their previous lovers, you know, maybe their ancestors. I mean, it's like it everything is multi-layered. And in the family I grew up in, and I wonder if this was the case for y'all, I would think it would be for all of us. When we're young, we just think this is just the way it is. This is the way families are. This is the way we interact. This is the way we relate. Isn't this the way everybody does it? And it's not until we sort of get into the world, maybe it's elementary school, high school, um, but I know even in those environments early on, I was still doing so much projecting. And I had no idea what so many of my classmates were dealing with, what their home life was like, the care they received, or the lack thereof. And in college, later in life, I saw more and more that was so different. But early on, I thought, this is the way dads act. This is the way moms act. This is the way the kids act. This is the way the family functions. But I think another thing that I took on was, this is the way it's supposed to be, right? Like I thought this was the best way. Like the way my family operated, the way my parents acted, and what they did for me and my sister and all. I just thought that was my goal, right? That was my standard. And so I went through life judging in other people, other circumstances, situations that were different. I'm thinking, well, y'all aren't living up to, you aren't measuring up to what I thought was the standard. I mentioned this last week, but I want to say it again, that for me, the most important thing of all of this, delving into attachment styles, looking at my relationship with my parents and others, is I just want insight into me. And I want the opportunity to become disillusioned. I would like to, as much as possible, do away with as many illusions as possible. I know that you three, let alone anybody, listening or watching this, have insights into me and see things that I can't see. But I would like to hear them, and I would like the chance to take them in and explore them. How tragic I think it would be for others to have greater insight into me than I have into myself. And if I have patterns, templates, and relationships, I want to know what they are. I want to be aware of them. And I feel like with everything we ever discuss, just raising awareness, just that one step changes so much. Just having the insight. And yes, from there I want to go on and address certain things and maybe make some tweaks and adjustments if I can. But it starts with that awareness. It starts with raising my level of consciousness, my level of insight. And so as we're exploring that's what I want to take from this. That's what I want to gain. Insight into me and how I relate to others, and not be fated to say, well, that's just the way I am. And I bet you, if you're like me, you've related to people who say that, who live that, who don't want to look, who don't want to see, who don't want to change. Hey, this is it. You like it or not, but I want to evolve. I want to change. And I feel like it is possible to, in some way, as needed, to reparent ourselves, to say, okay, this is what I received. This is what I need. Can I not in some way become the parent that I need? But again, it starts with awareness. I want to talk for just a moment about early life attachment and then get back to how it affects us as adults. One of the things that I came across in preparing for this that surprised me was, according to most studies, or I guess maybe all studies, but in this field, a majority of children tend to show secure attachment behavior. A majority. Now, I think anecdotally, we're talking, I would question, is it really a majority? But this is how they're defining it. Children with a secure attachment may be distressed upon separation, but they warmly welcome the caregiver back with eye contact, hugs, that kind of thing. Anxious resistant attachment children, infants, small children, are frightened by separation and continue to display anxious behavior even when the caregiver returns. Avoidant attachment reacts fairly calmly whether the caregiver is there or not. The parent separation or them coming back doesn't really seem to affect them that much, and they may very well not make the eye contact or embrace the caregiver when they return. Disorganized attachment has some odd or ambivalent behavior toward a caregiver, and upon return, approaching them, they may actually sort of approach and then turn away, have a little bit of a dance or something, and sometimes they even will hit the caregiver or have a interaction that is very fraught. and I guess complicated.
How old are they? How old are they talking about when they say
Okay.
most kids?
Well, so I don't have an actual age, but the lady we mentioned who she took the Bob, was that his name? I'm sorry, I'll have to look it up.
Bowlby?
Is it not
You talking
Lolly?
about
What is it?
Bowlby and Ainsworth?
Yeah, Ainsworth. Her study they called the
Yeah.
strange. Uh, it was all about, and of course, at that time when she did it, the mother was the primary caregiver. So she took a mother and an infant. And so these are really small children, but I don't know what age they went up to. But they would have the mother and child, a stranger would enter, and they tested like a mostly, I think, female strangers, right? And then they occasionally would have others as well. But then if the child was left with that stranger and the mother leaves, primary caregiver leaves, then they were studying how they related to the stranger, how they related to the return of the primary caregiver. So they are talking about infants, but I don't know how early they started and how late they went. Secure attachment children has been theorized to result from sensitive, responsive caregiving and insecurity from its lack. But not only is it a spectrum, but it includes many other factors, including genetics and other aspects of formative years and what we arrive with. Any thoughts or reaction to any of that?
Is what you're looking at based on studies that were done back in the 60s and 70s? Or is this also looking at recent?
They have updated. So, but primarily, what I was referring to was, tell me your name again. At
Mary Ainsworth?
Ainsworth. I'm primarily referring to hers. What did see was that they've done updated studies, but they're all really related to her sort of foundational work. But what I was just referring to and then was her original 1970s studies.
I think a little bit about, I don't know if bias is the right word, but who are the people that are going to be willing, open, interested, available to participate in such study?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how is that impacting or slanting?
Absolutely.
I think it's fair to say that there's an amount of secure attachment.
A what?
I think it's fair to say there is some level of secure attachment. There's some level of security present in the majority of parent-child relations, right? Um,
If you
I don't.
say that the people who were willing to do this study, the vast majority are going to come in with probably a more secure
Well, they're motivated to do something like this. There's,
than the general population,
perhaps.
perhaps. And perhaps has this issue of attachment style issues, let's say, intensified since the 70s? Have we seen an increase in, substance abuse and unhealthy relationships or whatever that are increasing the number of non-secure attached human beings? I'm asking, I don't know. It sure seems like that. But maybe it was just hidden more in the past. I don't know.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering the same thing. If there is maybe more volatility now, just in general
Yeah.
in our world, because there is so much more exposure to so many things, right? That it, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, I don't know, it was relatively common or maybe easy to lead a simple life. I love that song by Ricky Skaggs, Simple Life. But now, how common and what how common is and what is a simple life now? And what is, yeah.
Let me just say anecdotally that I live in the small town I was raised in. And when I graduate, when I went to high school, let's say, 44 people in my graduating class, very small micro town. And I know I did a good fair amount of projecting, but I also know that those kids that I was interacting with, living with, daily in class and extracurricular activities, weren't dealing with a fraction of what the kids in this same small town, same school, same we just weren't. And I mean, I know I didn't deal with a fraction of what some of the kids in my class did, but even those who were dealing with things, it wasn't as many and it wasn't as traumatic or deep compared to today. That's my observation. And I know it's just one person's observation, but it is a small town and seeing generations, because both my kids were raised here, all three of my children, and went to the same school, at different periods of time, from they're 10 years apart, all three of them. So I've gotten to witness that, and seeing that is makes me believe, in addition to talking to counselors who are working with the population now versus the one they grew up in, I do think it's more challenging. There's more going on.
Yeah, I don't remember any kind of talk or awareness of, and I was in a decent sized school. There were like 350 in my graduating class. I remember one girl was pregnant and had a baby. I don't remember the topic of suicide ever coming up. I don't remember the topic of guns and shooting and safety coming up. Now, I also don't remember anybody ever talking about LGBTQ. So we could say, I mean, that's a progress now that that's open and available.
Racial issues also,
Right.
much more out in the open. And
yeah,
I feel like too, if I look back at attachment style over time, like it's kind of changed for me over time myself based on where I was and wanting to be in a relationship or how I felt about the person. Like if you're not 100% in a relationship, you're going to be a lot more avoidant or seem secure or whatever than whatever. Where if it's something that becomes important to you, you're probably going to be a little more anxious about it. And I think the other person's attachment style probably is a little bit of a trigger as to how you act. Like I feel like I'm pretty secure now, but if I have avoidant behavior, I tend to go back to anxious a little bit. So I mean, I think it probably adjusts over time, and I think probably too confidence probably helps a little bit with stuff. Like if you're looking at a relationship as a way to complete yourself, you're probably going to be a little bit more anxious or a little bit more avoidant, maybe because you don't want to get hurt. Where if you're confident with it, you're going to lean towards, confident with yourself, and you're not looking for somebody to complete you. You're going to kind of fall into that more secure style. So I really feel like it probably, I'm sure everybody has something that they mainly are most of the time, but I can see myself being across the spectrum over the last, 20 years with different situations.
And what I'm saying is, when we do that, for me, I just want to explore that. I want to see, okay, where's this coming from? Why am I having this response? And when I ask that, it's not just about attachment; it's about whatever. If I feel defensive, I have to explain myself, or I have to defend myself in some way. I want to stop and say, why? Where is that coming from? Why do I feel the need to do that? If I'm wanting to control the situation or the outcome of it, or you can go down the list. To me, this is one element of, am I recreating something that I'm not aware of? And if so, I want to be aware of it. I feel like we are continuously recreating subconsciously dynamics, patterns, templates that we learned in our families and maybe before our families and whatever. We've just picked up stuff. And I don't want to just mindlessly go with that. I want to question it. I want to question my behavior. I want to question my reactions and say, is there an opportunity for insight? And is there an opportunity for a change, for a tweak? And it may be relatively small, but I would like to be aware of it.
And what you're speaking to be able to have that perspective and that openness and willingness requires a fair amount of security.
Mm.
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
So to come in open, I've got to feel safe enough to be willing to explore. Right?
I tell you something you said last week that I'd never thought of before, that's directly related to this, is I had never, in my little bit of exposure to these topics, this issue, I'd never seen security as essentially being secure within yourself, trusting yourself. I always saw it in the context of other relationships, right? So, like, I feel secure in relating to others, but I never, the way you described it was secure within me is someone who was raised or has a secure attachment style.
Yeah. Jasmine, what's on your mind here as we're talking about these things, and thinking of your experience working with kids, and you're in the schools, your lifetime experiences that we spoke some about last time. But where are you at, Jasmine?
I was trying to remember. When I lived in Washington State, so early 2000s or 2000, the program I worked for was I did home visits with expectant and new moms. And so part of our training was we did some training with Casey Family Foundation partners that were in the area. And it was what became Healthy Families that I later worked for here in Florida. And a lot of it was some of the research they were doing was based around attachment theory. And so the families that they were observing and that they were continuing to research were ones that were referred to their organization for parenting and those sort of supports because there was an allegation of child abuse or neglect. So these are all at risk, or at least some measure of verification of risk families. And one of the ways that they assess the attachment style was part of the intake process was there was a a living room looking room where like a welcoming room where the family came in with their children and would start to work with one of their workers, and the worker would leave the room and come back, and they'd take the parent and come back, and they were observing attachment style. And one of the things that came out of that research was that the more secure the attachment, the more likely the family was, like there was high correlation between those that exhibited the most secure attachment and had the best outcomes in terms of their treatment and working the family plan and stuff with Casey Family Partners. And then when I worked for Healthy Families, that was what we worked on with the young families was, or families with a new little one, was attachment. And one of the ways that we conveyed some of the research and stuff, because you have this 45-minute to an hour home visit and so much to cover, you really don't want to go in the evidence-based approaches, but that's what you're trying to teach. And so the three things that because most people, the language they like to hear is, I want my baby to be smart. I want my child to do better than I've done. And so we focused on touch, eye contact, and time. And so as we were talking about what's changed in terms of parenting, in terms of the stressors, I think there's definitely been a rise in addiction, or maybe more of types of addiction. I think there's definitely an increase in awareness of some of the things that would have been families handled privately, like certain forms of abuse and things that now are more public and people speak about them, and there's more awareness and more efforts for prevention and treatment. But one of the things that stands out to me so many times when I'm around families, particularly those with young children, is if you're thinking about touch and eye contact and time, and then you think of what we're most often touching, making eye contact, and spending time with, the difference in there's chemicals that are released that are bonding chemicals when we're making that eye contact with little ones. That touch, it bonds the parent. It's such a huge piece of attachment. I think there's probably emerging research about how that affects us, forming attachment at a young age, but then older. And then in the schools, I feel like you can definitely see the different ways that our students connect or do not connect with teachers. And those that come from a more secure, stable home, even if they don't connect with the teacher, they usually can do well in the class. Whereas others, it's so essential to have that connection. And so you just think about like the systemic, concerns as far as you have to have teachers and staff who have those secure attachments and are able to relate to students, and then and to be caregivers during the day, and almost be in some cases the antidote for those students and those young people that aren't getting those attachments. And that's difficult because I think in general, I don't know that we're highly connected digitally, right? But connected person to person is very different. So I think it's yeah. I have more questions than I have answers is the short response that I didn't give. Definitely raises a lot of questions.
It's good stuff. I do think, there is a certain benefit to texting, to digital connection, to being able to talk on the phone or have a social presence or whatever. And it has allowed me to connect with people all around the world that I maybe would see once a year or once every 5 years or whatever. So, but I think it is primarily a distraction and a disconnect. And I was thinking about, if you look at the number of people, kids, adults with anxiety, with depression, with addiction, as we mentioned, I do think I think it's the way the world is right now, like you're talking about, all the information, all the noise, all that frenetic, phone, all this stuff. But I was thinking about the way people who molest children, they say that, and again, I could be wrong about anything I say, so look it up, check it out. But they say that there's many people who are sexually molested as children who don't become molesters, but that if you find a molester, there's a they were molested at some point, you know. And then if you look at, and I'm coming from, you know, sort of the criminal offender, that's my background in this. Each of these perpetrators, these criminals, these predators have multiple victims, right? It's not one for one. It's not. And so I feel like as our sort of generationally, we're just increasing. We're the number of insecure, anxious, depressed. If I didn't get what I need, and now I'm in a, maybe say I am a teacher in a school, or I'm having children of my own, or then I feel like it's in a way it's increasing the problem. And then as Bob alluded to, in so many ways, the people who have the most need, have the least resources, capacity to address that need or deal with that need. You know, if you're saying that you need a certain amount of security to even contemplate these things or look at them, then how do you get there? How does someone who doesn't have that ever get to that?
I think answering your question just quick, you know, in its most concise way I can, because there's so much depth to it. I had we're speaking with a client today who reached a point where she fully believes that as much as this client yearns for the approval of her mother and yearns for a relationship with her mother, and she's like, you know, Jasmine, I just wish my mom wanted to talk to me half as much as I want to talk to her. But then also recognizing that there's something that all that rests with her mom. That there's nothing about her as an infant, as a child, as you know, as a young adult, that, you know, it really there's something that has, you know, that is unhealthy or that is unhealed in her mother, and so I think a part of that becoming firm in our attachments or becoming secure and reaching a healthy place necessarily has to be recognized, you know, changing some of that template or that framework that it gives us, that lens that we view the world through. You know, we have to have a new focus, right, in order to you know, some of the anxious or avoidant attachment, it's those insecurities. It's perhaps seeing ourselves in the wrong way. So whether it's a different lens, you know, different way of viewing ourselves, but also a different way of viewing the world and the others around us, which is, I think, a difficult task.
Yeah.
Doable, but difficult.
I feel like one of the places to start is demystifying, demythologizing, deifying our parents, the gods of our childhood, right? The ones that had all the power over us, we thought they knew everything. We thought they, and of course they had such a big impact, but at whatever age they were when they were having such an impact on our formative years, if we think about ourselves at that age and we say, did I know everything? Was I all powerful? Was I, you know, do I still, as an old ass person, have the answers and have it all together and all? Of course they didn't, you know, and of course they were just people. They weren't gods. And as much as I needed from them, or as much as I still maybe do or whatever, if I can just swap it and say, if I'm not all these things, how can I expect them to have been? might be a starting place. I'm asking. I don't know.
The other thing too, like I don't feel like I did a bad job with my children overall, but after I came out, after I started to heal a little bit, and after I started learning about, you know, emotion, like I never knew anything about emotional security. I always felt I was secure because I didn't have financial problems like other people have. I didn't have safety problems. Like, I might have gotten bullied a little bit when I was in junior high school, but since then, like I've been safe my whole life. I can walk down any street and not have a problem. But I didn't realize until, really this year that there was an emotional security where, I had somebody that co-regulated my system for the first time maybe ever, where I felt just this relaxation in my body I didn't know. So I learned then, I was like, yeah, I provided financial security for my kids, and I provided, you know, physical security for my kids, and that's what I got from my parents, and I thought that was fantastic. But then I realized that there's that emotional security too, and there's that I was more of a there person than I give a big hug, so I didn't really give them that, and my wife I think did, so they got a good balance. But I look back and I think feel like my parents were kind of the same way. They weren't super huggy, and my mom's often said, you weren't the snuggly one. Your brother was. Well, my brother, when he was born, one of the housekeepers from the motel we own, came and had him on her hip all day long and was taking care of him. Where I was, 5 years old, so I could fend for myself. So they just leave me in the office while they were running around the motel and doing work, and it would be short periods of time. But I think that kind of formed that where I didn't become a cuddly type. I became more of a standoffish a little bit. It pursued on into my later life, and I've learned that now, and I've learned about that stuff, and that's starting to get better. Where I'm far more affectionate than I was, and I'm far more open to that than I was, and not pushing people away like I always have.
I was just about to say, when I think of people who give good hugs, yours are among the best. They're not quick. They're not there's just, you have a way of hugging that is incredible. And so I hearing you say what you're saying and then experiencing your hugs is I
That's
think
so
it
neat.
really shows something.
A few years ago, I was literally Sheldon Cooper. They're there.
Well, you use the words co-regulation, and I'm thinking, man, you nailed it. That is the root, especially if we're talking about feeling safe in our bodies, because this isn't just about safety. This is about safety,
Yeah.
And a little before that, I was recalling my experience living in Latin America, living in Brazil as an 18-year-old, and how, again, not everybody, but in generally, there was much more touch. There was much more affection. There was much more openness of emotion. There was use of the body and talking. When I came home, I remember coming home from Brazil, I was still like
Yeah.
talking and um and having those experiences of warmth and touch, and that being kind of common or normal. I mean, even with the guys that were my buddies, there was a different kind of feeling of closeness. And, this is 1990, 91, being an 18-year-old guy. But my buddies in Brazil, we would like put our arms around each other, give each other a hug. And that's not something I would have remotely even considered. Not that I might not have wanted it, because I mean, I melted right into it in Brazil. I melted right into it. So
Would one of y'all or both of y'all or all three of y'all define co-regulation and talk about how it happens?
So, so your nervous system is really, and I didn't understand anything about nervous system until recently, but a lot of the way you react to things is in your nervous system. It's in that fight or flight reaction that you have. And I feel like a co-regulating partner is somebody that you can relax that with, and that kind of helps you relax your nervous system and get out of that fight or flight mode and kind of get into a fully relaxed mode where you're just present and not constantly looking for the tiger behind the bushes.
So you're talking about something you do with another person, and they provide a safe, secure
And that's
environment.
something, we went to that generational trauma conference, and they talked to, I never heard of that, but co-regulating partner. But I mean, I guess it's kind of like you have a codependent partner where you kind of unhealthily are there to support one another and prop up bad behavior. A co-regulating partners, I feel like, is somebody that's there that helps you kind of, when you have these trauma responses, kind of helps you, reduce the effect of those and work through them. Bob, you might have an actual definition for it. That's just kind of how I understand it.
Yeah. You're talking about being able to rest with. I can rest with this person, whether that's a partner or a parent or a friend. And I think one of the ultimate goals or hopes as a therapist is to be able to provide that kind of space of holding and security and resting, because it's only in that security that somebody can begin walking through and releasing their darkness and their fears and their anger. Right?
Yeah.
What
a gift. What a thing to provide for someone,
So this says, just be more formal, partner co-regulation refers to the process where two people, often romantic partners, mutually support each other's emotional and physical well-being, helping to regulate their nervous systems and manage stress. It's about creating a safe and supportive environment where both individuals can feel heard, understood, validated, and fosters emotional balance and connection.
They say that the way a healer approaches a wounded animal is to sit and be still in proximity and let the animal come to them. I am safe. I'm not threatening. I'm not moving. I'm just here. And think about the patience that's required for that, the energy that you're putting off to do that. And what a gift if we ever get the opportunity for doing that for others, for whatever the wound, whatever the attachment style, or whatever the trauma, whatever the need, of being a safe space. And the word Bob used of holding space, right? I am creating this cocoon, this atmosphere, I'm holding it. And that's to me that makes me think of the approach to a wounded animal. I'm not doing a whole lot, right? I'm not grabbing, I'm just here and I'm safe. Do you want to interact? Do you want to connect? And if not, that's fine. There's no pressure. I'm just here. And when Bob, you mentioned partner, parent friend, and I was thinking, and of course, counselor, someone who actually their vocation is providing this. And it's professional, of course, but it may very well be the first experience someone has with that and might actually bring enough healing about so then they can experience with non-professionals.
Yeah, that's the Carl Rogers unconditional positive regard. That's what it is. But we're talking here, and I'm thinking Jasmine is probably amongst us the experiential expert in co-regulation, because she did that with her two boys as the mom in a way that the rest of us probably didn't, by nature of not being the mother. I mean, even feeding your child from your body.
Yeah. I think one of the things I've so appreciate learning before either of my boys were born was about, with child development, those sort of things. And there's, a lot of research that supports all the positive outcomes that come from breastfeeding an infant. But one of the things, and it's hard to pull out all the different reasons besides just the breast milk itself, but part of it is the physical contact. We know that. And then, but one of the things that was so magical to me is that our infants, and the early infant stage, their best, like their range of vision is, that 8 to 12 inches from your arms to your face, and how much they're like, I think it's oxytocin, but there's a love chemical that's released as part of our hormonal response to that eye contact for the mom and the baby. And so the breastfeeding is actually healing. That's preventive for a number of things for the mother as well. And it's just, to me, it's one of the things that just the remarkable nature of our bodies, our mind, like the interplay of our intellectual brain and our physical being and our spiritual being all in one, like that act of breastfeeding a child, or holding a child, the way babies like to cuddle into our neck and we like to hold them. It's that same thing. It's that feel good chemical, and not everyone has that same response because of prior trauma or just different things. But I think that's one of the best things that I appreciated learning, because initially I was a young, early 20s mom, and so I so appreciate, there's, we make comments about not having a true guidebook for parenting and those sort of things. And, but I feel like in some of the things that my children unfortunately encountered, that we experienced as a family when they were young, it's that those moments and that, that sacred time together, I think that helped forge that bond, and also, it's healing for me and protective for them. So it's
those words you
I
just
love
said,
it.
sacred time, Jasmine. That is it.
Mhm.
Sacred time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and and then working with adolescents primarily during the day, 6th through 12th graders, and how many of those students, just all it takes to reset their day. And I don't mean to minimize what they're going through, or like this is the end all be all solution, but just how you can start to make a change in the way that they're feeling when they get off the bus and they walk on the campus with a genuine smile. And I wonder, with our faces so much in, screens and stuff, and parents, I was fortunate that I've not ever made a great deal of money, but I was able to stretch my budget and, be very thrifty and choose, choose positions where I had time with my children. And some of the students that I, see on a daily basis, I so feel for their parents, because they don't get that time, because, they work a couple, 2, 3 jobs and those long hours. And I feel like it's detrimental to the parents, because we all need rest. And like I said, that chemistry, those hormones that the pheromones, I guess would be the better term. I feel like is such an important part of connecting. and so important to our physical being and our, our mental well-being. And people are, Michael spoke about the quality of Jen's hugs. I mean, that's part of that, is that sense of being connected, and such a protective thing.
Another thing I experienced, I think, a lot of, in a different way in Brazil, was a lot of laughter.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of laughter. I mean, I was always somebody I liked to joke around. That's how I would get some attention and feel secure about myself. But there was something different. I don't know. Just thinking about a few of my friendships and different memories of a laughter that was just like pure and clean. And sometimes I will have sessions, and whatever will come up, however it unfolds, or what I say or what they say, and one of us or both of us will just start laughing, and there is such a sense of connection, like and assurance, and I think even acceptance, and kind of letting go. I mean, laughter is letting go.
Yeah.
And being able, it's a different kind of resting. It's like resting in joy. Maybe laughter is resting in joy in some way. And that's, I was looking for this thing that I have somewhere from grad school, or no, it was from Marshall. That was different qualities of a therapist that you hope to have. And one of the key ones was sense of humor. One of the big ones, and you wouldn't even think about it, but one of them was sense of humor, and being able to just, step out of being the removed person, and joining in a way that's just, authentic, not planned, not,
right,
created, but just.
One of the things I so enjoy about getting together with friends is, and playing games or hanging out, is the laughter, is the connection, and so much laughter comes out of that. Jasmine, when you were talking about providing the what you provide for kids every day in your job, I was just thinking about, again, going back to awareness. And if we raise our awareness and we examine these things like attachment styles and other things, I feel like it increases compassion. And I feel like it changes from, oh, that kid just has a bad attitude. That kid is just a problem. That kid is just how long before he's going to be in prison or whatever. Just saying there's a reason. And those children are adults that are the most difficult to give it to, compassion to, need it the most.
Yes.
And I was just thinking about my mentality. And I played basketball yesterday with a group of guys who it's the high school team in another location, and they came and played us, the old men. And I made a point to, regardless of what they brought to the court and how they acted or what they said, to congratulate them on every good play, every good shot, to shake their hand and give them 5 in between games and tell them great job, and I've tried to do that for as long as I've played, and sometimes I'm either so fatigued or they act in a way that is far more challenging for me to do that, and I have to just refocus, right? Why am I here? What's more important, me winning this game or making this shot, or being smiling, being kind, being encouraging to a kid or an adult?
You got to unblend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that, there's the opportunity. And so I feel like if we carry this in our days, we can find opportunities all around all the time where we don't get in our attachment style conflicting with someone else's. We elevate past that, or we incorporate compassion and love for ourselves and others into that, accepting them as they are, feeling they are doing the best they can, just like we are, and giving them, what is it, Bob? Is it Carl Rogers? Giving them what?
Unconditional positive regard.
Unconditional positive regard. If y'all are cool, I think that's a good place to stop. But if you have anything else to say, lay it on me.
I think I am.
Thank y'all.
Attachment styled out.
I was speaking at UU on Sunday. Would love to see y'all there.
I am going to be out of town. Unfortunately, we're going down to Gainesville tomorrow, and then going to end up in Itchituka Springs on Saturday, and we'll be driving back Sunday sometime.
Nice. You said Kaylin was washing your trunk. Are you taking like a steamer trunk?
No, the truck.
Truck.
Yeah.
Oh.
She's taking it to wash. So
What's down there? Is the destination the Springs, or is it a certain get together of some kind? Or
well, she's been wanting to go to the butterfly garden and the botanical gardens.
You can go ahead and stop this if you want to, where it can be down